Hi guys, this is Toronto's Broken. In front of me I've got the project file for my track Between Planes, which was the first single from the new album, and that's coming out on my label YANA Music, and it features Amy Kirkpatrick on vocals. I've had quite a few people asking if I could do some kind of breakdown of this track, and yeah, seeing as the second single is just around the corner, what a better thing to do than to round up this one and go for it. So yeah, if you're a dancefloor drum and bass producer or just like things kind of darker, then hopefully there'll be something for you, but hopefully there'll be something for everyone, for people to check out. So I'll just play a little bit of the build up and intro here, just so you can get for the build up and drop, just so you can get an idea of what to expect.
And I feel the time bending, and the clocks keep ticking. I don't feel in my body, but I want you with me. And the colors are spinning, and my skin is crawling. I want you with me. I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
Right, so yeah, if you've heard I imagine a lot of you have heard this track before already, but if you haven't, not to worry, it'll probably be helpful to you in some way if you want to make like dancefloor drum and bass. Before we start, just on my master chain, I've got Spectroscope.
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
Which just plays the waveforms. Span.
I don't know if I
hardly checked that, to be fair. I've got a guitar tuner, just always have, and then I've got this modern limiter, which is basically when it's still on 0, it doesn't actually do any limiting, it just cuts it at 0, so there is no kind of like mastering on this. This is kind of just as is the sounds. All it's doing is being soft clipped at 0 just so it doesn't go over, but there's none of that natural kind of compression you get from limiting. And yeah, so this is the raw version. The final version was mastered by Shane McEnhill at Vinyl Tweak, who's mastered my stuff for years, going back all the way to like Spirit Song and the Move It EP back in 2012. So did a great job of just giving this like the kind of like last little 10%. But yeah, let's dive into it. Let's have a look at the drums first. So with this one, I knew I wanted something fairly simple and quite techy and steppy for the drums on these. So yeah, let me just play them by themselves quickly. Get the idea there. So yeah, this is probably where I think I would have started the track, just messing around with some drums. Like I said, I wanted something quite techy to begin with, so I'll go here first. I've got the kick, which is a kick that I've used in a couple of tracks before, so I think I used this one on Pressure, Lose Control, Run Underwater, those few tracks. So there's just some like basic EQing. It's quite taking quite like a notch out of it. So without it just kind of sounds a bit too harsh, a bit too hard, and this one just makes it sound a bit more rounded. This is a good thing to kind of scoop the mids out of the kicks. We've got this GGD smash and grab plugin, which I think is awesome. It's designed for processing drums. As you can see, there's all these different algorithms. So I've got it on the kick mode naturally. And a tiny bit, there's quite a bit of gain reduction actually. But it's the beef, that's the low end. And a little bit of air, which is EQ. So these EQ, low EQ and a high EQ. And then there's just some utilities just for I think this is for automating the level at some point, in this build up here. I always do it on a utility if I want to do volume automations as opposed to onto channel here, because then I still have overall control of the whole level. And I've got utility boosting it here because I don't like to, for some reason, just put stuff above 0. And this has got the snare. It's made up of 3 parts. So if you're a Dancefloor producer like I am, then you almost definitely have seen a metric tutorial on Hackers. And this is basically the snare he made. I just recreated it and adjusted it to taste in another project, put it in. Then I've got this. Okay, so this is an acoustic snare room. So it's on the room mics of a kit of just a snare, and if I just turn everything off, so you can see firstly I've put a tiny little crossfade here at the start just so the transients in the main snare is given kind of room to breathe. I've got this imager here and it's doing some widening, making it really wide. Then I've got this gate, and this gate is sidechained to this snare here, so whenever this snare plays is at the same time the audio comes through here. It's kind of what they did with the big 80s Lindrum snares and drums, where they would gate the reverb against the snare, so the reverb would only appear when the snare appears and there's no tail, and it just makes it super wide. So if I turn the gate off, see it's nice and big, but it's a bit messy, and putting this gate on to follow the kind of amplitude of the snare tightens it. Then there's just various EQs, so low cut. This is a low cut again, but with a mid side. It's worth noting, I wouldn't have necessarily put these effects in order. They kind of would have been, I mix as I go along, so I would have added additional EQs and things accordingly. I wouldn't, because this is a very precise kind of EQ process for like a secondary instance of something. So I wouldn't have done this straight away. I would have done this as I was mixing the track down. Then I've got this clap player that pretty much used in every single track. Unfortunately, my transient shaper has reset itself, which it tends to do. There you go, that's better. Yep, kick and snare, and then on the snare I've got another instance of GGD, smash and grab, this time on the snare. Doing a bit of compression, bit of saturation to kind of kill the transient a tiny bit. Yeah, it just sounds a bit more rounded with it on. I've got this little top loop here. Nothing fancy. And then let's have a look at the tops in here. So all of these are in a group. And then the group has been sidechained against the kick and snare. Some smash and grab. I've got it again on the overheads, which is kind of what would be used on a real kit to pick up the cymbals. And a pretty drastic EQ as well. So I've got this hat loop here, which I think is taken from my track Pressure that I did with Juice and Charger. So basically this is playing eighth notes or quavers, so it's on every 8. I want it to hit on every 4, so what I did an auto pan to kind of gate it on the beat. Compressor. And then another gate here. So you still get a tiny little instance of the offbeat kind of hat, which kind of adds to the groove a bit. So we've got this break here, just a layer across over the top of the kick and snare. Remember, this is going into the group, which has been high passed and compressed and stuff like that, side chained. Coming in, I've got this little offbeat hat. And it's just some basic 909s. the stock Ableton ones, I've got this ping pong to make it wide. So then if you max out the ping pong and put a slight amount of delay, you can see it widens it. I like doing this because it's a more even spread using this millisecond delay to create stereo. I like using the ping pong because it's like a more even distribution across left and right, as opposed to if you did the simple delay. It always appears that one side is always happening faster than the other, so then it kind of, say it was the right that was a couple of milliseconds faster, then it's going to always kind of sound a bit heavy on the right side of the stereo signal. I like using this because it's even, and again, you can, if you wanted to, you can control the EQ. You can do a certain EQ range to widen. Very basic. Stereo expander. Don't really need to explain this. Just got one knob. There we go. An EQ. Just get rid of some of the low end. I've got a reverb here, which is this doing? Where's this doing stuff? Just on the intro here. So that's just to knock it back a bit in the mix during the intro when things are a bit quieter, so it's not so harsh. And it's a lot quieter as well from this utility. So I'm using the utility as a switch to make it quieter. And then I think after that, it's just little incidental things. So what's this? Just like a little 880 hat, just to add some variation. So I think this is quite important, getting these little incidental things that are subtle, really help with these kind of drums where it's quite minimal and quite spacious, but you want them still to be quite big sounding, because all these elements take up a lot of space because you've got you're trying to create a big sound. A little bit crushed cowbell. Next we have, if we're going down, again I probably wouldn't have written these in these orders, but okay, so these are the toms. I just got some, where are they from Industrial Music Radar pack, so just big kind of angry distorted toms, and I think I distorted them some more. I just got an overdrive on there. And using utility to pan it left and right. Next down here is a big old claps, which I like using. So if I turn these off, so these are very dry sounding, not very exciting. So a bit of EQ. There is automation somewhere. I often, if I've got an EQ curve like this, I will often automate like the lower or higher bands so they double up as like a high pass or low pass filter. Obviously it depends where they are in the chain, because what comes before and after it has a big difference. But ping pong again, for the widening. But you can see I've just kind of concentrated on the top end. Utility, which is automating something later on. Just a little move in the intro. Now I've got the amp. So it's kind of making it more into a big kind of, I want a big kind of like white noise explosion, wall of sound, reverby thing. And it's sending it more in that direction. It's subtle. And then I've got erosion here, which are all part of this kind of build-up of, so in the intro there's a lot of like distorted elements. So again, if you have a look at the automation down here, it just kind of makes it break and fall apart, which is what I wanted for that bit. Then here we have Can't go wrong with a little 808 snare fill. And nothing, there's just a high pass on there. And that is it, I think, for the drums. So not much to it, it's just picking the right elements. And using sounds you know how to work with. Like I've used this kick a lot in the past, so I was like, I know that as soon as I throw it in, I'll be like, oh, I've just got to do this and this, and this will work. I know how it will sound once I put the CQ curve on it, and so on. Yeah, that's about it. I've got some build-up drums. I've got this build kick, which is just a duplicate channel of the kick, but it's just a bit more knocked down further in the mix, and it's got some automation on it. I like to do these little like fill kicks or build-up kicks, just put them on a separate channel as opposed to using the main kick, because things can get messy otherwise. I like to have full control if they've got different roles in the track. Yeah, you can see here the automation moves for the EQ. Here, what's this bit? Oh, just a big snare, big like 80 snare. I think this is from a sample pack, but maybe it was by the looks of the name, it's probably sampled from like a French house Daft Punk kind of style track. Just does its job. Bit of EQ. I've made it a bit narrower. Yeah, because the big clap was a bit much.
If I'm even in my body anymore.
Later on in the track, I'll pull this move, which I'll just get the clap and I put it on every beat, and I just like that just to mix things up, to make things sound heavier and stompier, I guess. Anything else for the drums in the intro? Got a little clock ticking sound. I think this is it. Yeah. Just getting rid of a serious peak there by the sounds of it. Yeah. Bit of compression. Bit of delay. On the off. Yeah. Fairly simple. Is there anything else? A little noise, just to fill it up. And then, yeah, that's the drums, I guess. Like, the project isn't massive on this track, 76 channels by the looks of it, so quite small in comparison to the others. So next, let's take a look at these bass sounds. So I've got my bass mix group, I've got my sub mix, and they both go through to what's called a BS mix, which is bass and sub mix. And this is where kind of like triggers in my project template start to kick in to help with mixing. And then also some of the bassier elements and the intro and breakdown also go into this section as well. So let's just give this a listen by itself. So the core sound is pretty much just a saw wave. So it started off live. Let me just turn stuff off. Right, so that's the basic sound. So it started off as a Tantrum Desire sound that I turned into something else, and I was just through messing around with the types of filters and waveforms to use. In the end, I just settled on using a direct out saw. There's no effects. Yeah, it's literally just a sawtooth. It is being automated, however, by the level by the CQ curve. So ignore everything else. All that's happening is the level of a sawtooth is being automated by this curve. It's also on trigger mode, so every time you hit the note and it's not a glide, then it will restart, so you can kind of play with the rhythm that way a bit. Yeah, I think that's literally it. Like, there's macro stuff going on. What's the macro link? Macro is not linked to anything. It is literally just a saw wave in the sub oscillator, and that is it. But let's start processing it. So just a little bit of subtle chorus, because obviously that sub oscillator is in mono, so it just adds a little bit of tiny bit of width. Then now it's the amp plugin. Make sure you set it to dual mode so the stereo will carry on going forward. And yeah, the amp plugin's underrated. Just I love it so much. Whenever I'm making a sound, I need to stick amp on it just to see what would happen. Right, got GGD smash and grab here. What's this doing now? So I've got it on snare mode. Don't know why. It's adding some beef. Whoa. Yeah, that's doing a lot. So a lot of high end, a lot of beef. So I believe this beef is a low end filter before compression, and then this air is a high end, high shelf after compression. So go beef, and then to these, and then to there. Saturated as well. It's on tape mode. I think that's it, really. You can change the EQ, so I've got it on 60 Hz and 7K. I've got the ratio all the way down, so it's slamming it hard. Right, now we need to start cleaning up this mess. So got a mid-side EQ, so it's just processing the stereo signal. It's more like a safety precaution, because obviously you don't want any low-end stereo information. There'll be numerous stages where I do this, where I will do mid-side EQ just as like a checkpoint. It's like a safe point, I guess. Now I've got this fairly dramatic EQ. So scooping a lot of highs in the mids, a boost here in the low mids, and this little notch here, which must have been a resonant thing. I think maybe when it jumps up an octave. Yeah, so without. Yeah, so it's just to tame when that fundamental goes up an octave to here. And then I've got a gate. Yeah, which is just kind of cleaning up the more staccato bits of it. Next we've got this. So I think this is an earlier iteration of the bass. So if I make a new channel and drop it on. So I think this is an earlier version of the bass line. Okay, right. So what I do sometimes, just to add some variation, I will pitch this up an octave in the piano roll, render it, and then bring it back down using a warping algorithm. And even though it's back to the original notes, it still sounds completely different. And I would have made the high one a lot wider, because I'm using this bit to kind of create space. So there's kind of a bit of a, if you think of like a call and response, but like in the stereo image, like it's quite mono, then wide, then mono, then wide. And it's good to use to accent certain parts of the riff as well. But also I had to do, by the looks of it, Yeah, so almost everything of the mid signal is taken out here. Again, I wouldn't have planned this. This would have been through just trial and error as I'm going along. But quite a lot of a low end boost for the stereo and high end. There will be another mid side later on in the chain that will also tame that, because obviously it kind of undoes what I just did here. So listen to these together. Yeah, and then here we just got some little bass noises. Some nice like really kind of maybe resonant-y sounds, things that have a lot of frequency information. So made it really wide. And then I've got a filter here, high pass filter, that's been sidechained against the snare. So when the snare hits, it goes up and then back down, up. Another amp, OTT. So as OTT, I probably would have messed around with these settings a bit as well, but I always boost the output up and bring the amount down. Stereo expander, make you really wide, and then more saturation because I thought it needed it, and then okay, they sound quite loud at the minute. That's because obviously they're not being sidechained yet, so harshly against the kick and the snare. Right, then these go through to a bass mix. So I always have, I'll come back to this in a minute. So I always have this PSP Vintage Warmer, which I've said many times. Alex King Youth, he put me onto this preset, the semi-driven tape. All of my basses just go through here under group, and it kind of helps gel them together, gives them a bit more bite. And I have it set up as part of my default project template, which there'll be another video on my Facebook. If you go looking, you can find it, where I talk through my project template. And yeah, I don't even need to think about it. It's just automatically on all the time. Yeah, just love how it sounds, makes it warmer. Like I said, another mid-side EQ is like a safety point. So all this that's on this chain is pretty much, maybe apart from here and here, is the template. I'm using this high pass here because when you turn the resonance down, it's pretty much an immediate dead stop at that frequency without any kind of resonance peaks. Compressor for sidechain against the kick. Another EQ here because I felt it needed it, and then a limiter. I don't often really use limiters all that much, but I'll just put it on like as a safety precaution here. Right, if we go to here, so I've got this DJM filter, which is kind of like a core part of the sound. So if I bring up, yeah, so there's and then the resonance knob is there. So we have a look at these two. So have a listen to the bass as it. So it's the same sound, but just using this filter here, which is like a recreation of the, is it the DJM 200 Pioneer Mixer filter. It just creates these resonances and it just changes the tone completely, and a few additional notes as well to really play off those like resonant peaks. And then later on in the track, when we go down to that low C sharp, some crazy stuff going there, but it worked. And yeah, so let's have a look at the sub, which is very basic. I always keep my subs really basic. All you need is a sine wave, and it's just playing the pattern that the LFO is playing in Serum. But also the benefit of this actually programming in the rhythm LFO as opposed to just using an LFO on Serum is that I can add variations which can add to the groove as well, which would be a lot easier to do than trying to automate an LFO curve. But yeah, it's just a sine wave, 2 octaves down, and then a little tiny quick pitch drop, 2 semitones, and that is literally it. Got a low pass on there, but probably not doing anything because there's no high end frequencies. And then I've just got this 808 kind of sample for breakdowns and stuff. And yeah, so that's the main basis going through to this bass mix. So I've got another EQ here because I felt I needed it. So this is both bass and sub being summed together in this. This now has been sidechained against the snare, but as a group. So if you want to kind of hear it properly, I need to. Right, and now I have track spacer. So this is part of my default template. What I will do, I have these trigger channels down here, the snare one, and I just take a clone of the main snare body, which is this. Yeah, so a clone of the snare would go into here, and it's been triggering this track spacer, which if you don't know is basically a sidechain, but it's a adaptive EQ one, so it kind of sidechains the frequency spectrum as per the shape of the source signal, and obviously depending on what band area you want it to affect and by how much. So the blue line going up is basically the snare that's being used to trigger it, and then the white line is basically the EQ curve in response to that. In order to get the snare to come through and sounding nice and big, there's a lot of kind of tricks, from creating a stereo field, kind of like an impulse to follow it as a layer, to having it being sidechained compression wise and using track spacer as well. So it's being both sidechained as opposed to by level and by frequency. So let's have a look at the basses in the intro here, which is fairly, yeah, it's just the same sound, apart from it's just got a slightly different EQ curve, an LFO curve. It's also triggering a filter, no effects. It's got a chorus, distortion again from the amp, various EQ curves, volume automation, and yeah, more distortion that automates on towards the end. And then going back here, what's going on? Fairly simple stuff. And then in here we have, okay, so in the intro there's these little kind of synth stabs, like an old schooly kind of garage bass, I suppose, that we've all heard in a million tunes, but work quite well in here. So saturated to bring up more frequencies, chorus to make it stereo because it's a mono sound in the first place, some EQ, make you wider, and more smash and grab, doing things. And then there's these like techno stabs here. Yeah. These are also being sidechained by themselves in the filter, so you use the envelope mode without a source signal. It just uses the actual channel, the sound itself, to trigger the shape against. So what I do like to have is just get loads of like tech house and techno sample packs and stuff, and like if I can find one, this one might, right, they have tons of these like discordant stabs and stuff. Yeah, like there, like those you can turn into stabs anyway. But yeah, just get loads of don't just stick to, if you make a drum and bass, don't just stick to drum and bass sample packs. If you do buy sample packs, it's always good to get things from all over the place. Like the majority of samples I'll probably use when trying to find like things to fill out, little incidental things and whatnot, or maybe even little melodies and stuff like that. They won't even be from drum and bass packs in the first place. So then just before the drop I have this is just a bounce of the bass. That's just been filtered by the DJM, and that's about it. I think it's just got a fair bit of reverb on. Yeah. So at this point here, I would have had a kind of a very basic build up, the drums, the drop, kind of rough arrangement of it. And I think I probably only had like 32 bars of the drop at this point. And so at this point I kind of had this idea, I want this like mantra talk, spoken word kind of vocal that's kind of robotic, not like rapping, but I want it to follow a rhythm and things like that. I want the intro to be quite empty and spacious. So I sent it off to Amy Kirkpatrick, who vocaled on this, and we've done a lot of stuff in the past before as well. And I think probably within 24 hours she just sent me loads of just like spoken word takes, I think. So like if I find something like the raw,
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore. If I'm even in my body, if I'm even in my,
just lots of variations of it.
Somewhere in between nobody, and I want to in between where I am, and I don't even have anyone with me. I don't even need anybody with. Somewhere in between where I am and where I want to feel the time bending my body any.
Obviously not everything was used, so I just kind of made an arrangement from it that I really liked. So the vocals by themselves are,
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore. Somewhere in between where I am. I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore. I don't know if I'm even in my body. I don't know if I'm even. Somewhere I have nobody and I want you with me.
so yeah, you get the idea. So let's have a look at, so these are the main vocals here.
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore. I don't know if I'm even in my.
Oh, so Amy has an absolutely quality kind of microphone. She always sounds great, and she's really good preamps and stuff like that she uses from home. So majority of the time it's not really a massive amount of work that I need to do. It's more really subtle things just to suit the mix, or just to kind of get the level right and stuff like that, so it actually sits into the mix nice and clearly. Sometimes you will get vocals when a mic wasn't that great, and it's kind of a bit of a headache to kind of get around that, but in this instance it just worked really well. So I've just got,
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
so I'm just kind of notching out some problem areas here. Got de-esser,
I don't know if I'm even in my body.
moving the S sound, harsh S's at the top. Oh, I've got this analog, I'm not even sure what it does.
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
So that just kind of beefs it up a bit, I suppose. Imager here for
I don't
stereo.
know if I'm even in my body anymore.
So this is creating artificial stereo in here. So because we were sending a mono
I don't
signal
know
in,
if I'm even in my body anymore.
because I wanted that big kind of sound to take up like the room when you play it. And then I'm not even sure what this is. I'll just play. Literally, it's just playing around with these free plugins that I've got.
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
Oh, it's an EQ.
Somewhere in between where
Then I've just got this glue plugin
I
here,
don't
which
know if I'm even in my body anymore.
just kind of flattens the voice a bit. And then we've got a utility that automates later on to make it quieter at some spots. Down below, what's this?
You with me.
Okay, so this is the kind of delay tails.
You with me.
So
You with me.
of course made it wide,
You with me.
pretty drastic EQ. Decapitator here. So
You with me. You with me. You with me.
So by the looks of it, I used a preset and then slapped on the punish, maybe played around with these distortion styles at the bottom until I settled on this. As this is going to be more of a background element, I could be a bit crazy with it. Is there a pan here? Oh yeah, there's some panning going on here.
You with me. You with me.
EQ. Then I've got this vocal tail plugin. Rack that I've made and used on loads of stuff. So I've got the dry signal, and then I have a ping pong delay that's being sidechained by the dry signal. So the dry signal will play, and then this delay will be cut out as it's playing, and then it'll come out afterwards, and then an EQ. So,
You with me. You with me.
so maybe if we solo this.
You with me. You with me. You with me. You with me.
Right. So next we have, which is probably the fun part. So I used the vocoder. So first thing I did,
If I'm even in my body anymore.
is a lot of stuff by the looks of it. I've done this on a couple of tracks on the album where I've used this like a vocoder layer to kind of beef it up. So I've got just an auto tune which is stuck on this A sharp note by the looks
I
of
don't
it.
know if I'm even in my body anymore. I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
Bit of
I
EQ.
don't know if I'm even.
But I would have put the vocoder on first, and then this stuff would have happened, this EQ would have happened beforehand to change the sound going in. And I just used a pitch tracking, so it's tracking itself. And using this kind of square pulse wave here. Saturator. So a gate just to kind of clean up the tail, because there's, as you can probably hear, there's a bit of like a ringy tail, some kind of little delays that happen from the vocoder, because it's really sensitive. It picks up the little pops and clicks and stuff like that, like might happen afterwards. So use the gate to kind of get rid of those. Chorus to make it wider, more kind of synthy. Mid-side EQ and with a bit of a boost here. And then a reverb that automates later on doing something. Where are you doing things? Here. So it's just there. This is the fun bit here in the breakdown. Oh, okay, so this is playing around with some of the things, like you can see here, formant shifting. which kind of, I liked how it blended into the bass sound here. So I was quite like that bit. So the formant is just kind of changing the shape of the mouth. It's not actually changing the pitch. But here I do change the pitch for just a bit of fun. I loved how it sounded when it went from high to low. Makes it sound super talk boxy. And that is basically that for the vocoder. Again, I've got that delay tail rack that I use, vocal tail, sorry. And maybe just, I think I just changed the type of filter to a filter delay, so it's more like a dub delay. And yeah, so there's now these bits are just kind of, I think, reinforcing elements. So what's this? Okay, so that isn't doing anything. So these two vocals, by the looks of it, are going through to track spacer on this group here, which also helps with the mix. So we will talk about that a bit later on. But that's the vocals, done the bass. Let's just have a look at some of the just extra synths and melodies and stuff like that. Right, so up until now we've looked at the drums, we've looked at the bass, looked at the vocals, which are kind of the main core elements of the tracks. Let's have a look at the little incidental effects and stuff like that, sounds that are in there. So there's quite a few things in the intro. First thing, running underneath the whole thing, this kind of low drone that's been pitched down, something I made in Pull Stretch years ago. I've used it millions of times on various tracks. This is a job is perfect what it needs to do. It just runs underneath the whole first 32 bars out of the intro, especially when it's in the empty hollow part.
I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
It just sounds a lot more menacing with that in, even though it's subtle. It's one of those where you don't really notice it's there until you take it away. But there we've got some Brahm horns that have been stretched. Like you can hear when they're by themselves, is the kind of typical kind of stretching artifacts that you get, but once you layer it in with everything else, it's not so noticeable. And this little like synth tail. So yeah, and then this kind of little hook thing, I've called it Prodigy. Where is it from? It's a sample. This kind of has a very Prodigy-esque kind of sound. I think all I basically needed to do, I think it's from that same industrial pack as well. Yeah, I just needed to, I think by the sounds of it, it's probably a guitar being heavily distorted, but I just had to do some timing things, as you can see here, from these warp markers, and repitch it back down into F minor. And then got these big old build sounds. So it's not even doing anything there, but it's just a big super saw riser. Various things are macro, so like opens up or maybe gets more detuned as it goes up. Processing wise, got this utility for later on where I need to fade it out. Yeah, so it's mainly the amp. Bringing in the noise, got rid of the low end, and then I've got so yeah, I got this crazy sound, which is made using Toxic Biohazard, which is an FL Studio synth. Between Plain Siren is the name of it, but I imagine it would have just been a preset, some crazy preset that I just changed some of the parameters for. So yeah, EQ that to clean it up. I got this frequency shifter here. Doing that old like frequency shifting massive trick. And then a sidechain. Need to remember when I was mixing this that the whole time it's going to be played at the same time as this saw, so I kind of have them together. And obviously you want to make sure the pitch is being repitched at the same rate and same speed with like the pitch bends and stuff like that, just so it stays in tune. And a little fart at the end. Right, if we go down the channels, let's have a look at this. What's this? Just like a little vocal incidental.
Party, but I want you with me. And the colors are somewhere I have no body.
Subtle, just adds an extra, a little extra depth in here. Next. Okay, so I've got these little so I've got these plucks here. So basic shapes and just a low pass filter, nothing crazy, but I think the effects are in here. So yeah, bit of hyperdimension, bit of delay, reverb, EQ, getting rid of low end, and then got like a multi-band OTT mode on for that, which completely changes the sound. Then various kind of side chains to get that groove against kick and snare. More EQ. Then an auto pan, which is kind of working as a tremolo, so it kind of builds up in volume over 2 bars, then back down, 2 bars, and back down. Yeah, let's have a look next. So we've got this little, what's this? Like a siren-y sound noise. So I think that is from the same pack as the industrial one. Oh no, this is a different one. So this was a load of bass sounds that my friend Undyne Industries from years ago made, just running various sounds through pedals. Just happened to be one of them. It's not annoying at all. And I would have just repitched it and put some processing on it. So I don't know what's going to... I think because of the way it's been algorithmed, it doesn't really like it so much. It sounds a bit weird, but it works in our situation. Yeah, so it's that overdrive after the reverb. See what happens when I put the overdrive before the reverb and then afterwards. So yeah, really, the order of things are really important. And it's just good for... then this one's being pitched up. It's just good for adding tension.
All the time pending. Somewhere I have nobody me. Somewhere I'm in between where I am and where I won't be. Somewhere I have and I want you with me. I want you with me. I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a riser siren slash thing. I like getting siren sounds and then doubling them up as some kind of riser as it goes along as well. This here is a pull stretch thing. I think this is like a distorted guitar chord, an F sharp 5 chord, just running through pull stretch, been stretched a massive amount, repitched it, and I've got a big sawtoothy pad. And then what else have we got? We have got this sound. It's a little bass thing.
I want you with me. In the colors of
It's not doing much.
in the colors of body anymore.
Yeah, you can hear the tail of it there. Don't know why that's not part of these, but maybe it just worked better just not following the same chain as the others. And next we have got just some little just some strings doing like a pizzicato or staccato intonation. That's why the key switch is on there, because that must have been the right note. It's been filtered in.
Even in my body anymore.
Yep. Down here we've got those stabs that I showed you earlier. They're all the same sound. It's what gives them the different characters, the way the filter is moving as it plays along. This is, I don't know what this is. Must be doing something. I think. Yeah, so this is just a little kind of drone that I made. It's D flat minor, so I just had to... Oh, I pitched it down in this instance. Just changed the trigger of it so it's on the beat. It's a little percussive drone. Right, then below here we have got some basic saw pad, just all the way up to 16 unison, reverb, bit of compression and filtering, EQ. That's about it.
The clocks keep ticking. I don't know if I'm even.
And yeah, that is pretty much it. Down here I've just got various like impact sounds, little white noise hits. So these work quite well over the drums. So they're all the same sound, but you can just see I've just changed the envelope by playing with the fade curve in Ableton. Next, what's this? Just a little reverse thing. So this is using the Tyrell synth. It's just a sequence preset, and I use it as like some kind of like riser or something. And I got the DJM filter on there doing some fun stuff. And then I think these are literally just various white noise hits. Rises. What's this? A little LFO dub noise. Laser, that's the word. And then here we have a just a very basic saw rise. And apart from that, I think that is I think that's everything. Oh, finally I've got this channel here called Whiteout. So I've got this bass clefs easy washout plugin, thanks to Axel Andromedic for pointing this out to me and sending it my way. I think you can get it quite easy online somewhere. It's just an effects rack that does this big washout effect. So if you listen here, simple as that. I like to, on some tracks when I'm using it quite heavily, I'll just route it all into there and just do the big washout. It does make things very wide though, so he did suggest as a tip to make it more mono and then open it back up again, which I think works. So and then a track spacer for, as you'll see here, there are some very cool channels, these two, which go through to it.
If I'm even in my body anymore. I don't know if I'm even in my body anymore. I want you with me. I don't know if I'm even in my.
And that track spacer just helps the vocal sit in there when there's just a lot of stuff going on. Like, as you can see, it's only for certain parts. It's these two channels, and it's only for certain parts. And that's it for this track. I imagine this is just a reverse reverb. Yeah, Amy's reverse reverb. There we go. Yeah, that's it. So hope you found this useful. It's not so daunting of a track really once you get into the nitty gritty of it. It's just picking the right elements and the right placement and just giving things enough space to breathe, either through how you arrange it or by using things like track spacer and a lot of sidechain and stuff like that, just to help things sit together. But I think most importantly it's about finding the right elements that work together and having them for certain roles. So I wanted like very percussive stabs in there, and whilst the bass is very kind of rounded sounding, it still has a lot of movement. But before I completely waffle off, this has been Toronto's Broken, and if you've got any questions, just feel free to drop a comment below wherever you're watching this, and I'll try and get back to you.